we want to get into the Samsonov situation and just to figure out. I don't know if you have a comparable for him, but to figure out, what are the tricky numbers, the term or the dollar figure, and where do you think this thing goes?
Well, I mean, this is where I think it goes. Obviously, the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to have to find some money to satisfy Samsonov in a certain way. Like, I understand there's arbitration and all of that, but I think the Leafs have Joseph Woll, and he's a really good young prospect. But before you can really know what you have in Joe Woll, like, is it 2 years, 3 years at the NHL level before you know? So what are you going to do for the next 2-3 years when you have Marner and Matthews and Tavares and Morgan Riley and Nylander? And you got to get somebody that at least can give you consistent play. And I thought Samsonov did that last year. Now, is he, in my opinion, a $6 million goalie? No. But I don't think he's a $3.5 million goalie either. So you got to go in between there. But are the Leafs willing to pay $5 a year for the next 3-4 years for Samsonov? I think that's the $1 million question. I'm not sure that there's any better options out there. That's the problem. Like, I look at all 32 teams and their goaltenders. There's really no options out there for the Leafs other than trying to make it work with their goalie and roll the dice and hope that it works well.
That's an interesting picture you painted there, Marty. So you're saying in a lot of ways the Maple Leafs may be in some ways forced to give him a little more than they'd like because they don't have a ton of other options.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're going to go Connor Hellebuck? Absolutely not. Like, you're even at $6 million next year, Connor Hellebuck, that's a really, really good value contract. But he's not going anywhere if he doesn't have the extension. And to me, that is going to cost way too much money. There's been rumor that it's, he wants $9 million a year. Look, he's not going to get $9 million a year, but even $8 million a year for a goalie that's going to be 31 years old at that point that wants a 7 or 8 year extension, that's too much money. Mm-hmm. John Gibson, look, John Gibson, everybody, well, not everybody, but most people have raved over the fact that John Gibson has been the one, maybe only, constant thing for the Ducks over the last few years. Yes, you have Trevor Zegras now, and you've got, some up-and-comers, but John Gibson has had to do a lot on himself. Now, I've never been a big Gibson fan. I think his game's too stiff. I think it looked good on a bad team, but you put him on a good team, and I think it's not going to be much better. So I've not been a Gibson fan, but are you making that move? Are you looking at trading assets to try to get John Gibson, despite the fact that maybe Anaheim is going to have to eat some money or whatnot? I wouldn't do it. I think Samsonov is probably their better option, but there's not anything that would rock my boat. And I think they were in the same situation last year, right? When they walked away from Jack Campbell, and they had to go Samsonov Murray. Like, I feel like the Leafs made a decision a couple of years back when they decided to part way with Freddie Anderson. Freddie Anderson, in my opinion, is still a top-tier goaltender, a top 10, top 15 goaltender in the league. Was that the mistake? Was that the mistake that now you keep paying year after year and you keep, having a bit of an unknown in that situation?
You mentioned $5 million, and so here's the tricky part of this, and I'd like your reaction to it. Is he's an RFA for one more year, and then he goes into those UFA years. So I guess the ultimate question is, as you cough up UFA years, what's it worth? So you feel that that's worth around $5 million. Most people I've talked to have it in the low $4s, but I sort of agree with what you're saying.
Well, here's the thing. I follow this guy on Twitter. He's from Rochester, New York. We had him on our show in Buffalo, and he's with AFP Analytics, and they do tax preparation for athletes and not just hockey players, but many athletes. And then they went into the projection field, and they project contracts, and they've been pretty good this year when you look at numbers that where they add the projection and where the players have signed. But the tendency for the higher end players has been to get about $500,000 to $1 million more than what the projections were, because one domino falls and then everybody can get on that wave, right? Like the defense waves when Damon Severson signed and then got traded out of Jersey and all of that, you're thinking, wow, that was a lot of money. But yeah, okay, well, now everybody rides that train. Well, another way to have leverage in negotiations is there's nobody else out there. Or I'm going to go to arbitration. I'll get a one-year contract, and then after that, I'll be a UFA. So what are you going to do about it, right? Like if the Leafs let Samsonov walk to UFA next year, are they in a better, same, or worse place than they are right now? I would think that they may be in the worst place just because we don't know what you have really at the NHL level with Joseph Woll. I think he's a great goaltender, but it's still a bit early to tell. So maybe they're willing to roll the dice. Maybe Brett Treliving is saying, hey, go to arbitration, get a one-year deal, and then by Christmas we'll know what we have out of Joseph Woll. Maybe we re-sign Samsonov long-term on January 1, or maybe we just let the contract run out and we have a young goaltender for the future that could start in a year from now. Like that, that's what you have to come up to inside the hockey department and conversation. You have to make a decision that way.